for our great hero Tales 1.5, who saved so many legends every day. Who knows? All right, so let's talk about this game. I'm still not going to have an exceptionally formulated, well understood response for this game yet. I just don't know exactly what I can bring necessarily without just hours and hours of thinking and writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting. Am I still quiet? How about now? Am I still quiet? Um, I rambled on for like 15 minutes yesterday about my thoughts on this game. I must say the updates and the upgrades to the game are all well done. The amount of playability this game does have when there is playability is awesome. It's fantastic. I really was impressed with how they took what people kind of would call one of those flash games and made it into, something really impressive. I mean, the first one had a fan base for a reason. And don't get me wrong, you can have a great flash game. This is an example. The series is an example of having great flash games. Um, they're very replayable. They really do have a lot of, content to kind of tinker with and explore and learn and things like that. But there are three endings to this game, and two of them destroy humanity. So the problem I have with that is the game is called Rebuild, and the history of the series, the completion is when you rebuild, which would mean that the quote unquote good ending, the quote unquote canon ending, I would imagine it's the canon ending anyway. I guess it could be not the canon ending. Um, Requires so much waiting around and not playing so that random events can take place, and then getting a correct seed of a map where you're put in a place that's actually decent enough to try and complete all of the five main things that you need for what actually was like a really compelling, well written segment of the game that one, the people who just are playing it through from start to finish are never going to find. Um, and two, that you put that much passion and effort into something that requires so much not playing and is going to pull you so far out of the game. It's really not a direction to go in. I really do suggest, reconsidering this particular type of pathway. I don't mind, having some extra storyline off to the side for these, or maybe alternate paths that at least all have some sort of positive ending, like whatever. Like maybe there's one ending where, you find enough cure for those of you in the town, but you don't have enough to synthesize for everyone. And so the majority of the world is dead, but at least your city can try and live a satisfying life for the generations to come. And maybe someone in the future can do something. Kind of a neutral ending of sorts. But to have two bad endings and the only good ending so tightly locked away behind a waiting wall, I don't know what to think of that. I'm really frustrated that this was the path that was taken. Um, I guess I would say, barring the story, barring any completion stuff, strategy-based gameplay, probably an 8 out of 10, maybe a 9 if you consider it Flash, because typically Flash is a little bit more restrictive because it tends to eat resources. I would say the writing, when you get to experience the writing, 9. It's really, I mean, for what it is and how it's trying to convey a story, it does a good job. And there's tension, and there's some level of connection you get to the characters. I barreled through a lot of the stuff. If you go back and read it, there's some heart and writing that really went into this. And for a zombie game created by a group of people who aren't really making all that much money, oh, it's top notch. It's really, really good. When you get into, the labs and, you know, the interactions and when they're giving the atmosphere and the demonstrating what it looks like, it's done really well. Um, the plot, if you go start to finish, like a 4. I give it like a 4 out of 10. Um, if you just go through this game normally, the game basically ends with, "Aha, fooled you, everybody's gonna die." Like that's the plot. If you just, go through as a layperson just trying to experience the game and not digging for secrets and stuff like that, and not looking online for what is one. Okay, so here let me break down for you exactly why it's so much of a mess that you would put that wall up. The Probably what I would say are two of the biggest highlights in the writing, seeing, the excitement of finding the cure and the tension of, trying to get all that and actually have some sort of real ending come out of it has, it has you don't get to experience that unless you've completed this. And then the other one is the actual adventure for the monkey blood. Gretchen's an interesting character. The places that you go have, a nice visual. Um, if it weren't so complicated, I could see it being, a really compelling story for someone who's, just trying to go through and experience it. But what you have to do to get there. Okay, so you have to find one of the towns that has a mall, a motel. If you don't have a cricket bat, you have to find an 812 mark. You have to then get to a point where you have not allied one of your um, other factions, have them create a mission, have an engineer on your team while you're doing the mission, which you typically, unless you're using them for first aid, unless you have them for that reason, you're never going to have an engineer while you're out there. Then you have to make sure that the mobs that are on there go towards you and attack you while you're completing a mission. It has to be a given mission by another faction. It cannot be just, scavenging out in the middle of nowhere. So you have to go completely out of your way and kind of manipulate all the mechanics in the game to make that part happen. Then you have to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. I waited something like 700 game days after resetting the map like 5 or 6 times and deleting save files repeatedly for a cricket bat to appear. Or if you got one earlier, it might make it easier, but you have to have lucked out to have been near enough in 812 that you're able to get that and been curious enough to see what happens there. Um, so then you have to have that cricket bat, give it, or I think maybe you can trade it to Gustav without getting him to trigger the negotiator perk where they start offering you other stuff, or that will nullify it. So you have to put all the people you have with negotiation, which is pretty common that you'll have them on your team by the time that you're going to have all that. You have to put them all away so that you can just have just a standard interaction with him where he'll start talking about Van Newton. Then you have to have at least 5 schools in your area and talk to a non-allied faction to the point where they offer to fill your school with books. Now, to get a scientific research, you don't pick the non-fiction books, you pick the fiction books. You have to pick the fiction books to make this happen. So you have to be thinking illogically in that sense that research wouldn't be with the nonfiction, it's with the fiction books. You have to have them offer you to do that. Pick those books, which means you still can't have allied everybody on the map. Then you have to explore one of the malls that is next to you and has not been scavenged but does have things to scavenge, then it will trigger the uh, getting free time still and you can go explore. Then you go to the mall, pet department in the mall, and that will trigger that segment of the event. Sometime in here, there's a chance that you'll have had Gretchen show up. But you need to have all four of those done. You can't not have any of those done, or else you have to restart the whole map if you've done any of those wrong. You have to restart and trigger it the correct way. Then, when Gretchen comes to town, you need to send someone out so they get attacked and hurt by doing a mission that they should not be doing if you're thinking with any rational point on your character management. They get hurt, there is a chance, there is a possibility, not a guarantee, that she will then say that the person has been bitten and is turning into a zombie. There's a chance that'll happen. So you might have to do it multiple times, which means, again, if you did it by fluke the first time, then good luck. If you did it by fluke and got that, you have insane luck. Um, Then, after 40 days, she'll attack someone in your fort. Well, within 40 days, which means you're on a time limit for that getting attacked thing. The other things, as long as you know about them, you have, as much time in the world as long as you section off the things and you can come back to them. Within a time span of 40 days, she will get in a fight and leave. You can either talk to her or you can have her leave. It doesn't matter. Then, after all of that, everything, you have to have somewhere on the map a motel that is not owned by another faction that has something to scavenge, and you have to make sure all of that was done. Everything else has to have been done before that. You can't scavenge it by accident partway through. You can't do any of that. Kind of like the mall. You have to scavenge it when it's, close enough to get that event triggered and remember to select the right thing. And you don't get a second option if you find another mall. You have to restart and go for the pet store. So, after all that, then it will start a mission at a hospital where you have to go through, and pretty much from there, it's linear. You pick the hospital, you go through the mission, you try and find which of the ones has Gretchen's information in it. Then that stuff will send you to a school that's somewhere else on the map. These two, on the bright side, if you've gotten this far, will spawn off of the map and create a new square for you if you don't have them. So you go to the school, and that's where you find her. Once you find her, you go through the events, and she will give you the monkey blood, and then she will have gone away. So then you have all of that. You also have to, on a different map, well, I think you can do it on the same map actually if it might have all of the things, I don't remember. Yeah, there are three maps that you can't do this on. There are three maps that it is impossible to do this on because of the fact that you don't have all of those items appearing. You don't have motels or malls or something showing up. Um, the other one is you have to do the St. Michael's and Luddy's storyline in the second level, where you have to talk to them. You have to make sure that you do the right thing of apologizing to Michael. He'll start crying. Then you go and talk to the Luddies, and then you do some back and forth. I think there are actually specific choices you have to make, which means you could mess that one up by accident as well. Eventually, you'll get permission to go to Michael's old house, where you find the laptop that you then have to research the stuff on, and then there's that. You also have to obviously get far enough through the game that you end up finding the thing where you talk to the government and hack the laptops and get the third cure thing. That one you don't have a choice to go around. You will get that one regardless. So you have to have all of that. Then you have to go and talk to the Rotten. When you talk to the Rotten, you have to make sure that you have all three of the options on the the one right before um, Vancouver. Whichever one is right before that, I don't remember what the name of the town was off the top of my head. Um, you have to, while you're there, have already had all three researchers, which means if you already did that, you have to start that map over and do the whole thing again. Then you talk to the Rotten and explain to Jesse, show him all three forms of research, and then when you're done with that, you finish that map. And then on the next one, you have to give the medicine to everybody, get kidnapped by the government, defend your base while you're still being attacked by several of the factions which are now going to be at war with you, hold out long enough for it to start letting you attack the government, which could come before or after that. When you're kidnapped, you'll start fighting the government. Um, then you start have to start taking down the government's base as quickly as you can to find where Jesse is somewhere in there, which will typically come after you've discovered the nuke, which means even if you've come all this way and you think that's what the ending is, then you're going to set off the nukes and get the nuke ending instead, where you nuke everything and everybody dies. Then you have to go through research, which takes, if you have, just one level 10 researcher, apparently 50 game days while still getting attacked by anyone who's against you plus all of the zombies. um, Spend all of that time researching it, and then you have to re-ally all the factions, some of them from like 20% alliance, which means you have to keep going and talking to them while they're still attacking your base. All of that is needed to do this. I don't mind a challenge, but the problem is there's so many things where you have no chance of knowing what you're doing to get the ending. If you want to have a secret ending of some sort, that's fine. I have no problem with a secret ending or whatever. But to make the only positive ending, the only ending that has any positive to it, the only ending that has any chance of having, an optimistic outlook or even just a, well, I guess that's that kind of ending, you have to have gone through all of those hoops. I feel like you could have made my frustration mildly less if I'd gotten to the end and there was a way to get a partially satisfying ending. Not two bad endings that say, well, you should have looked harder at all of these hard things that you would have never guessed to do it. Um, have one where maybe the survivors, some of them are immune and someone else has to carry on and research because you die or go insane. Um, Maybe have one where, like I said, you discover a cure, but there's not enough of it to go around for everyone. So the people around you, you have to, watch the factions fall down around you and become zombies, and then the whole map is there. And the way you win by that map is you have to take over the entire map and develop a city base, rescuing any people who haven't been injected with the disease around there, and make, a city where you could start trying to repopulate, that has a bleak, but at least there's an ending kind of thing. Or, have one where you know, you find the cure, but you can only give it to, two other factions because you're limited, and then everyone else goes to war with you three. There are plenty of other options you could do where you could have, a medium ending. Because if you only have bad endings, typically a bad ending is a punishment for deliberately making the wrong choices. Some of the best examples I have would be huge spoilers to say that. But usually, if you're getting a bad ending, you've had to go out of your way to get the bad ending. Typically, there's a neutral ending, except in like horror games. I wouldn't consider this a horror game out and out. I would consider it more of a strategy game. But sometimes in real horror games, the ending, is the main character dies and it's more of a one player kind of, there's a single focal character, not so much a strategy game where you have a whole group of people who you're worrying about. um there there are, less good endings in those, like In certain ones it might be, your love interest or a person who's been a close friend to you gets killed, but you make it out, and that's the neutral ending, or it's still a bad ending because you didn't save everybody or whatever. But having the neutral ending at least gives someone, some level of satisfaction after spending the point where I realized that was going to be the case. I'd already spent 28 hours on this game. I'd spent 28 hours streaming to my audience this game and giving, my thoughts and, oh man, this is such a good improvement. I'm so happy with this. And then, it's just like you're hit with a truck at the end. There's no good to come of it. And then you find out you have to go through all these hoops that involve mostly waiting and rolling random number generator kind of things until the thing happens. And apparently to find the cricket bat is an extremely low chance. So, it wasn't, just bad luck for me that I had to wait 700 game days to have that show up. Apparently, it's very rare. There are people who say that in their whole playthrough, maybe they got it once. And it might not have been, when they had any knowledge of what the heck they were doing. Um, I guess I could have gone back a map or two and worried about getting the cricket bat on its own, which would have narrowed down the last one's time, but you still would have had the giant weight on some map somewhere. Um, the I feel like, a couple things that could have improved getting the good ending. You could still have it be, something where you have to go look it up online. While I'm not a big fan of having a main or at least some level satisfying ending require you to know things in advance, that's the big reason that I hated cave stories because to get the only real good ending in that, you have to go against logic so many times in the gameplay. Um, but you can salvage something from that if you have that be the case, and it's also not so up to luck. Um, I think I restarted probably 12 times before I had a decent map for me to get all of those things put into place. And even then, I screwed it up because I didn't understand the process. Even with a guide in front of my face, the guide requires you to do so many things that it's easy to mix up what is necessary and what is waiting and what all you need to do. Because I thought once Gretchen left, that would trigger the event at the motel. But that doesn't. Once Gretchen leaves, you still have to have all four of the other setups done. If you have any of them missing, you have to start the whole thing over if you saved after doing that. Um, so, I mean, I really did. I loved this game. I would say overall, despite all of my criticisms and despite the huge gnashing gaping hole that's left by having that be so out of the way, so luck based and so tedious, I'd still give this game a 7. I mean, it really was that good. If you'd made it, just a little bit less obnoxious, an 8. If you'd made it, found some way to convey the same thing and still get across the tension and the frustration without it being tedious and boring and make you not care anymore, kind of pull you away from the writing, I could possibly see giving this even a 9. I mean, it really is a very good game. It really does a lot of leaps and bounds over the others. My viewers, the three of you that there are, my viewers will be able to go through and compare 1 to 2 and see the improvements and, you know, the increased tension and the more interpersonal connections that end up going into it and the things that those steps up are all there. And, it's nice to see the progression. And I'm thrilled for this game. Congratulations, you guys, on making a game that is that solid that it can take a blow like that and still manage to have a decent score. Um, if I had been going into this and this game had like a 6 in my head and I'd found that out, I might have just said, "Well, I guess we're never going to finish this game," and just stopped it. It might have made me rage quit. Like I haven't done that yet on this channel, but I almost was at that point, and then I was like, "I'll give this game the benefit of the doubt and try it." But keep in mind, I used up between 4 and 8 extra hours of recording on here, and I don't have time to sift through since this is definitely not a job for me. This is something I do for fun right now. I don't have anywhere near the income to do this as a job. Um, since this doesn't have that background for me, I have to just upload all of that because I don't know where the highlights are. I can't sit through all 36 hours and, take an X-Acto knife to it to make it more interesting for viewers. And it's going to be a bad series probably on mine. I might someday go through and cut it down. Um, I don't know for sure. I definitely am going to try and cut out this review I have here at the end and the last, getting to completion and reading it and sharing that. And I might try and send that video to Sarah or the staff in general because I think that those are some legitimate criticisms that I really think are important. I want this game to be amazing. And I want this game to be amazing. And for the most part, it did a really good job at amazing me and impressing me at how much improvement there really was. But if they make a Rebuild 4, I really, really want them to know my concerns with that being the case. Again, if you want to have the good ending be hidden away and tricky or hard to find or something that you might have to go read other people or, crowdsource the information and everybody figure out, well, what did you do to get it to here or whatever, tinkering around until you find what might be a better ending, that's fine. But you have to have some sort. It goes back to the reason that I criticize Cave Story or Mad Father or games like that is no matter how bleak you make your story, you have to leave some sense of hope. Or I'm gonna pan it. I'm gonna pan it. You have to leave some semblance of something can go better, something can go right. Even if what if it came down to, say, the pharmacists and the St. Michael's both were skeptical of the cure because, something anarchy, something something, they don't want to be controlled by someone else having a drug trade. And St. Michael's, um, they know perhaps they didn't trust Clark and the research, and they know about Clark for, whatever. Have, two factions who they don't take it, and they have to carry on, and you die. And your ending is still you lose and you died, but there's hope for somebody out there. That's a neutral ending. That's a neutral ending I thought of while I'm talking to you people. It doesn't have to have, nuclear fallout, everybody's a zombie, good ending. I mean, there's such a wide spectrum there. I guess you could call the nuke ending the neutral ending, in that not everybody ends up, going insane to zombieism. Everybody dies probably pretty quickly in a nuke. But even still, that's not a good ending. That's a negative ending. I need, you have to have a neutral if you're going to play that. You can't have just a good and a bad ending. I mean, I'm sure there's some gamer out there who totally disagrees and says, this was a great set of endings. And I'm sure, I mean, you obviously can because they did. Backtracking a little bit because I worded that a little bit too strongly. Um, I just feel like leaving it so that there's no way to feel fulfilled when you already did some of the work isn't fair to the player. Um, so like, I guess the way to say that is, if you've gone through and you've taken the time to do every single one of those levels, and see, like, I guess one way to say it is there's no reward for pacifist all the way through. There's no reward for not killing anybody in every single map. I wouldn't have gotten that. I would have been okay replaying the entire game through under the premise that, running the Last Judgment gang out of town on the Rifts versus the Last Judgment, um, I could have seen that being, a sticking point where you could have had, the better ending is by the end you're at, or even Just a reward is by the end you're at advantage with every single team as long as you never killed them in any map. Um, because even the chosen ones, you don't actually have to kill them; they kill themselves. Um, if you get, half the people devout, and then you get to the research thing, and then you break off, you don't have to kill anyone there. So you could go through this whole game pacifist, and there's no reward for that. I feel like, they put the rewards too out of reach for an average player. There's no intuitive way to reach those rewards. And I guess that may be where the sticking point really is. Um, there's no good ending unless you jump through hoops and jump over hurdles and also happen to know about all of those hoops and hurdles that no one tells you about. And there's no, because you could have both sides. You could have like a reward for being a warmonger, but a bad ending, where all you have to deal with are the zombies and the government in the last part because you've killed off all the other factions, but there's no way to get a good ending at that point. Or you could have, the pacifist where you start with all of them as allies and you have to deal with the zombies and the government. But you don't get that. You have to, have this grueling, you're under attack by everybody the entire time, and then you still lose. I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way to get all the way to the end and find out how almost inaccessible the good ending is. So I guess there's my rant. It's gonna take a while to figure out how to cut this down. Shin will be here in like an hour and a half. So I'm gonna tinker with these videos and cut that down so that it is its own separate video. And I will try and share that with Sarah and the team if I have any way of doing that. Um, I I I really think the group should be proud of what they've done. I really think that the game itself, if you pull the story out and were to just make it a strategy game, is a very solid strategy game. If you just had it, find the resources, kill the guys, find the resources, kill the guys, you win! Like something like that. If you had just that part, like, a super basic version of Rebuild 1 would be, even Rebuild 1 had some level of plot, that part is good. And then if you put, just the writing on a pedestal and you made this, like a story and you had just the good ending as like a book or a visual novel, that's good. That's done well. And then if you take, the challenge of the secrets and it gave them, a higher reward instead of the decent ending to the game, those are all good. It's just you had all the ingredients and you put them together the wrong way. And you didn't even put them together the wrongest way. That ending could have been much worse. The biggest parts were having things unscavenged until you knew the correct time to scavenge them, having a random event be the gatekeeper to getting everything done, and then having two other random events technically also be gatekeepers, and having, enough control over the map and enough foreknowledge to do all that when none of that's told you in the game. There's no hint at any of that. There's no way of finding it out. And I'm fine with a game not holding your hand. I'm fine with that. I really am. Oh, look, I'm starting another rant. I'm fine with a game not holding your hand. It may not be a game I play, but I'm fine with having those. Dark Souls is great for the people who it works for them. It doesn't work for me, but I don't have anything against the game doing that. But I feel like the way this game can lend itself to being either casual or challenging, having it be something where the casual player is going to have almost no opportunity without reading up on it, um, you've walled off the good ending too well. So to the team, if they do see this, if they do read this, I really would love to see improvements in some way. And then if there's a sequel, I would hope there's a sequel. I think this did a great job. Um, but you just got to have a new, like, you could have quelled about 60% of my rant. 60, probably. 60% of my rant by having a neutral ending. I think that would have done it. I think that that would have done enough to at least make me go, oh well, it probably would have been stuck at a solid 8. Because like I said, even with all of that, it still got a 7. It still probably got a 7 out of 10 in my head if I had to, stick a number to it. Um, it's definitely far above average for a game that started on Congregate. There are a lot of, I mean, there's plenty of decent games on Congregate. Don't get me wrong. I love Congregate. I'm like level 23, 24 on it. Um, but there are plenty of games that are on there that are, baby's first Flash game. And this one really took the mantle and, led the charge to make something very good. And I really do like that. And so I'd love to see more success from this. And whatever you guys do, all of you on the screen right now, and anyone else on all these other pages that I showed in the first episode, um, you know, whatever you do, I support it. But I really do think that a neutral ending would have helped this game. Either a neutral ending or making it not so random event based to get the good ending. I mean, you still could have had it be challenging. You still could have had, a choice tree that made it to where that, where you had to redo things to get the correct agreements. Um, those are both opportunities, but I think it's just those requiring so much luck in what for me, you can do it on several maps, but what for me was the Kelowna map because it had the setup where I could have the Fearless Reclaim already acquired because it's so useful. And I mean, I get see like that random event, Fearless Reclaim being as rare as it is, fine random event. Perfectly great. It gives you an advantage if you get it, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get it. So you got to figure out how to, make it work otherwise. Like on the last map, I didn't use Fearless Reclaim because I wanted 2 fighters because I knew it was going to be hard to defend the base. Um, so things like that, that's fine to leave on a random event and make that, a reward thing. Having Fearless Reclaim is super awesome. Fearless Reclaim, and then, the choices, your main character in the game, you can get different perks depending on what exactly it is that you select. And the choices that I picked ended up working really, really well for me. Having Programmer and Real Estate Agent were, they're probably the only reason I was able to finish the last map. I ended up getting the perks that worked really well with the way I was playing the game. Having the tech tree already started and being able to reclaim buildings and change buildings in one day were both huge bonuses. And so, I mean, good on you guys. My rants and rambling and anger and frustration aside, good on you guys for making a game that has so much to it, especially from such humble beginnings. The characters are likable. I kind of zoomed through a lot of the stuff, but anytime where I sat down and read, and I was nervous for that because I typically read them quietly or not at all aloud, because as much as I'm talking right now is actually part of my problem I've had recently, where I've had, a lot of coughing fits and sore throats and stuff because I don't drink enough water and I spend a lot of the day talking when I stream. Or, well, lately I haven't, but now it's mostly allergies. um, the so I kind of skimmed through and kind of got the gist. But whenever I would sit down and read any interaction between any two people, there's charm to the characters. It feels right. Everything is written well enough that it feels, like a universe. People are a little bit stereotypy. Like the Luddies are definitely the super conspiracy theorist, paranoid, people, and then the cultists are the cultists. Um, the pharmacists have some level of personality, though. The elite crew has some level of personality. I really like the St. Michael's crew. I think that they were written really well. I would like to have seen, more of that. There's only development a couple times. Um, the pig farmers are literally the cannibals who are the cannibals. So I was disappointed by that. The illusions in the game are awesome. I really did like, throwing in a Shaun of the Dead reference. And the cricket bat, it's nice. The thing works. It's just that it's so hard to get. I really liked having that. I liked, I mean, I guess you could say that the Pig Farmers is an allusion in and of itself to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It might be. I don't know for sure how they were planning that out. Um, which in and of itself is an allusion to Ed Gein, who's a real murderer from the, I think, 70s, 60s. Um, the the charm in making the not copyrightable Motel 69 and the 812 Mart, I thought those were great. All Mart, the snark, I guess, in a sense that copyright, you could say. The designs were charming. I really like that, while you don't always get to build them, I liked the different versions of buildings that you have, like the suburb versus the apartment versus, whatever, and then the two wide suburbs and the big farm and the park and the big park, having a lot of variety for a game that doesn't necessarily need it. I really liked that. I like that the majority of the buildings that are, quote unquote, just buildings, the ones that the redecorators reclaim, which sometimes would get me very irritated. So the redecorator perk has, just about as much takeaway as it does give. Um, Most of them have another benefit. Like, I was trying to read what the radio stations was. I didn't see whether it had any perk, like it increased the chance of survivors coming to visit or anything like that. Um, the police station increases defense, for example. You can chop wood at the parks. You can hunt at the parks. You can hunt in the fields. You can fish in the river tiles, even though you can't claim them unless it's the bridge, which you can claim. Um, having all those things considered and not just, claim this and rebuild over it. Um, the first map that I was on, that's all I was doing. I wasn't really considering that the other things had some perk or some benefit, and they do. Um, the water treatment plant and the electricity increasing happiness. Although I didn't notice it. It seems like your characters get unhappy very quickly, which I guess in an apocalypse you might always be, some level of frustrated or upset. That makes sense. But I feel like you don't get as much reward from those as you should. I guess it mostly just gets rid of the lack of happiness from amenities missing. But I feel like, it was a little bit too little benefit for me. I would still go after them, but I didn't ever notice any change from them, honestly. Um, the But I do like that there's little mini missions for you have to rebuild, and then you have to get rid of the zombies on the water tower. On the other one, you have to refurbish the building, then create the core, and then go back and install the core. I like that. I like that Gustav happens to have the thing you need for the thing, and he'll trade you for it. I like that even though Gustav is just the wandering merchant and he doesn't have like a base where you can interact with him, he has the personality and that you do trade the cricket back to him and he talks about, where he's from and that the game is more popular over there and the fact that you can talk to Kathleen and rescue her, you know, or, I mean, there's a lot to this game. This game could have been, a cheap third cash in. It totally could have. It has the success, they could have made it, polished the graphics a little bit, and called it a day. But they made something really good out of it. And that's why my criticisms are so big, is because I'd like to see more of this. I would personally, I would pay $1 for the DLC to add a neutral ending. I'd rather they just patch it in because I feel like no one would be, down for paying extra for an ending that I feel should have been in the game in the first place. Um, but I would pay for that just so that you could feel some level of, even if it was disappointed, satisfaction. Like, things can be depressing without being hopeless. And depressing can be good as opposed to bad. So, I mean, there are lots of things that could be done to tweak this game and improve it. And that's why I gave it a 7. But overall, I still really do like this game. I think that people should play this game. I just think that they should go into it knowing that if you want a satisfying ending, you have to seriously read up on it and work at it. But those are my thoughts. I'm gonna cut these videos down, get some lunch, and when I come back, Shin will probably be here. So that'll be the afternoon. I work tomorrow, and then I'm off for 2 days. So we'll try and figure out what we're gonna do. But I will talk to you guys here in a little bit. Thanks for watching my video, and have a good night. Well, good afternoon, I guess. Afternoon. It's the first time I haven't been doing night for a while. Have a good afternoon.